It was an ordinary morning at Westfield High, a well-regarded school in Austin, Texas. Students filled the hallways, some chatting in groups, others rushing to finish last-minute assignments. But for Jacob Miller, the day began with unease. Unlike most of his classmates, who came from families of doctors, lawyers, and entrepreneurs, Jacob was the grandson of a farmer. His hands bore the roughness of early morning chores, and his boots still carried traces of soil. He was a quiet boy, but his silence often made him a target for ridicule. As Jacob entered the classroom, he caught the disapproving glance of Miss Whitmore, his history teacher. She was known for her strict discipline and high expectations, with a demeanor that intimidated even the most confident students. The lesson began, but Jacob struggled to focus, his exhaustion from early farm work clouding his thoughts. When Ms. Whitmore called on him to answer a question about the Civil War, he hesitated, trying to gather his thoughts. "Mr. Miller," she said sharply, crossing her arms, "if you spent more time studying instead of whatever it is you do on that farm, you wouldn't embarrass yourself like this." Laughter rippled through the class. Jacob swallowed hard, but remained silent. "Honestly, I don't see the point in wasting time on students who clearly aren't suited for academics. Perhaps you'd be better off sticking to what you know, feeding livestock and working the fields." The room fell silent. Even those who had laughed earlier now looked uneasy. Jacob stood, his knuckles white from gripping the desk. "I may not be as academically gifted as others, but that doesn't mean I don't deserve respect," he said, his voice steady despite the anger simmering inside him. Ms. Whitmore smirked. "Then prove it. Otherwise, leave my class." The word stung, but Jacob didn't argue. Gathering his belongings, he walked out, his heart pounding with humiliation. The next morning, as the sun bathed the school in golden light, an unexpected commotion spread among the students. The rhythmic thumping of helicopter blades filled the air. Teachers and students rushed outside, their eyes widening as a sleek black helicopter descended onto the school's football field. A tall, commanding figure in a tailored suit stepped out, James Miller, Jacob's grandfather. Known throughout Texas, not only for his vast farmland, but for his agricultural empire, he had transformed sustainable farming, supplying organic produce to top restaurants and major grocery chains nationwide. Jacob followed closely behind him, his posture more assured, his face unreadable. As they entered the school, silence fell over the crowd. Even Ms. Whitmore, usually unshaken, looked visibly tense. "I understand there was an issue with my grandson in your class yesterday," Mr. Miller said, his deep voice resonating through the corridor. Ms. Whitmore blinked rapidly. "Mr. Miller, I assure you, I treat all my students equally." "Is that so?" he interrupted, pulling a check from his coat pocket. "Because this school receives substantial funding from the Miller Foundation. I funded the very science lab you take pride in and sponsor the history program you oversee. Yet, you found it appropriate to demean my grandson because of his background." The color drained from Ms. Whitmore's face. "I raised Jacob to know that hard work is honorable," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "Perhaps you should educate yourself on that instead of looking down on those who put food on your table." A murmur spread through the students. Jacob, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "I don't want special treatment," he said. "I just want to be treated with respect, like everyone else." Ms. Whitmore nodded stiffly, avoiding his gaze. "I understand. I apologize, Jacob." A satisfied smile tugged at Mr. Miller's lips. "Good, because respect isn't given based on wealth or status. It's earned through integrity and hard work, and my grandson has both." The students erupted into cheers, many giving Jacob nods of admiration. From that day forward, Jacob walked through the halls with his head held high, not because of his grandfather's influence, but because he had proven that dignity isn't measured by grades or wealth, but by the way one stands firm in the face of adversity. As for Ms. Whitmore, she never underestimated another student again.